And good morning. This is Mike Lodge. I am the business advisor. I'm glad that you have joined me. So, yesterday, I was talking about the smoke that was coming into Las Vegas. Well, we have a culprit, and that is it was coming in, being blown in from California. I guess there's some big fires being burned in California, and it came over bad. This morning I got up, it was 75 degrees, perfect outside. Perfect. No smog, no smoke, no nothing. So that's what California does, even to Las Vegas, a long ways away, when there's fires burning up north and central part of California. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about tax and tax credits that politicians are saying that they're going to do. Now, let me preface that. Most of the time, when the politician says they're going to give a $50,000 tax credit to new small businesses, it's not going to happen. Because, for one thing, at this moment, we have no detail of what that 50,000 encompasses. I talked about this yesterday. Well, here's the problem that I see about these taxation in Congress and politicians. When a tax bill or uh, a bill that is supposed to help the economy is done in Congress and goes to the Senate and gets signed by the president. When it goes over, let's say over to the Internal Revenue Service, it gets interpreted slightly differently. Because let's say you have a tax code that has A, B, C sections in it. Then all of a sudden, Congress says, no, we're going to add a D to that. Well, there are parts of A that affects that D. So you remember that line that said from politicians that said, "Well, you're not going to get taxed if you're $400,000 and under." Well, that didn't happen. It didn't happen because of the way that it's a code. Same thing with the PPP loans. When the PPP loans, everybody thought that, well, if you got a PPP loan, you were going to be forgiven. But no, then there became a whole bunch more rules because that bill was sent over to the Internal Revenue Service, and then it was interpreted different. And I remember Senator Grassley said, "Well, that's not what we thought was going to happen." But by the time it goes from Congress to the Senate to the signature of the president and over to the Internal Revenue Service or over to another government agency, it gets interpreted totally different. And it does affect all Americans. So when they say, "Oh, it's not going to affect you," it does affect you. You just can no longer rely upon what a politician tells you is going to happen by the time it goes from the government over to the Internal Revenue Service, from the Congress over to the Internal Revenue Service, or whatever agency is looking over that particular change in the law. Tax code structure is very complicated. And I remember during the last election, everybody was saying, "Oh, we're going to get," no, I guess it was 2 elections ago when Trump was coming into office. Everybody in Congress was talking about getting the tax return down to a postcard size tax return. Never happened. Even though they went out and said it was going to happen, it never happened. Was it simplified? No, it was not simplified. Was the tax code made easier for you and I to understand? No, it became more complicated because every time a law is written, the legal mumbo jumbo and the interpretation of that by the agency that is going to be in charge of that new code or that new law interprets it slightly differently. So that's why when you see all of these things happening and all of these statements being made by politicians, "Oh, yeah, we're going to work for small business," that's just a statement. It's no detail of how they're going to work for small business, how it's going to impact small business, how it's going to uplift small business. See, the problem is that politicians think if I give something away, it's going to help somebody. But most of the time, that giveaway is very costly and it affects the taxpayers down below. You and I, or you and I, I should say. So every time that I see politicians talking about taxes and tax codes, one, they don't know what they're talking about. I can guarantee you 100% Kamala Harris knows nothing about taxation. She knows nothing about business, and she knows nothing about the economy. On the other hand, Donald Trump has run a business. He has filed multiple tax returns. He has been in IRS audits, so he knows pretty much what happens within the tax code. So we have an issue where here in America, when a politician says, oh, we're going to change the tax code, beware because something is not going to fit exactly the way that you think it's going to fit. Because politics, interpretation, and writing, and implementing are three different things. And sometimes they don't meet together. One of the things that I hate is when a bill goes into Congress and people say, oh, well, this is the Inflation Reduction Act. We'll use that as an example. Inflation Reduction Act. And the spiel comes out that it's going to reduce inflation. If they say it's going to reduce something, it never does. It goes straight up, and the expense gets really bad for the American people. And in that bill, there is some hidden taxes in there, especially on energy bills. That's why a lot of you in the past couple of years, since that passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, you have seen your natural gas bills and coal bills go up, your heating bills go up. It's because of that bill, because there were hitting costs in there that affected the American people. Now, a lot of you don't know that, and a lot of you were not paying attention. But every time that they say that this is an Inflation Reduction Act that never reduces inflation, it always creates something to go up. And that's what happened with that bill. It was a bad bill. It should never have been passed. Why it did, it was only for political reasons only, not to help you and I. No, never did to help you and I, because we later found out that the Inflation Reduction Act was really a green new energy bill. They were supposed to go out and build thousands and thousands of electric charging points for EV vehicles. What happened? I think what, three were built? I don't know, but it never did what it said it was going to do. And we have to be very careful about what politicians say to us on both sides of the aisle. There is never truth to any type of legislation of it going to help you and I, unless the politician, from the president down to the Congress, says, I want this specifically, and this has got to improve the lives of the American people. There can't be any trickery in it. And if they are truly good and they audit their bills and really make sure that it's going to help the American people, it's going to put money into their pockets, then it will work. But if it's just a political ploy, it's a political promise, it will never happen. It just will never happen. And that's where you and I, we have got to become very good, due diligence individuals, really looking into what it says. And the good example was that $50,000 tax credit of Kamala Harris. What is it? We have no idea. What does it affect? We have no idea. We know it's for new startup businesses, but what happens to all of us guys out there in the world who are trying to meet our payroll and trying to meet our rents and mortgages, trying to keep our automobiles going, trying to, I mean, we have a whole bunch of lists that we have to live up to as small business. What happens to us? Nothing. So that 50,000 was for new startups. And let me tell you, most of the time, tax-wise, when you have a new startup, you have a lot of expenses and you will probably have a loss. Look how long Amazon did not declare a profit on their income statements or on their income tax, or both of them, because they had all of those loss carry forwards from the years that they were starting up. They had a tremendous amount of losses. And people say, well, they're not paying their taxes. Well, The way that the tax code is written is that if you've got tax losses, you had to move them, you could use them in future years. And that's what they did. They used the tax code. Everybody in business uses the tax code to their advantage if they hire the right people. So when we hear all of these political statements out there and all of these promises made, know one thing, it probably will not happen. It probably will not happen. Because that $50,000, if it's not detailed and we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know how it's going to work, it will never get through Congress, and it will never get through the Senate, and it will never be signed by a president. It just will not happen. The facts are in the details. And if we don't know what the details are, and a lot of these politicians are spouting just simple one-line sentences. Yes, I will provide a $50,000 tax credit for new businesses. And that's it. No detail. You don't know how it's going to work. So I'll give you another example, okay, of how Congress is tricky in this. A few years back, it's probably about 8 years ago now, if I remember right, Congress put together a transportation bill. But inside that transportation bill was a tax bill. And it had to do with foreign income. So if you had a bank account that was in another country, even if you were the signer on it, you might even not be the owner of it. It might be your parents' bank account. And if there was $10,000 or more within any given year, it became reportable. And it wasn't just reportable to the Internal Revenue Service, it was reportable to the Treasury Department. And if you did not report that you had an account that was $10,000 in value or more, or that you were a signer on that account of your parent or brother or sister that had $10,000 or more at any given time during the year, it became a criminal offense. You had to report it. And so what they did when it first came into law, they took a whole bunch of IRS agents off of other cases, off of audits, and moved them over to this new category of tax reporting, and they went after people. But that was within a transportation bill. So when these transportation bills or all of these other bills, so health bills or healthcare bills or Inflation Reduction Act bills go through, you have to look at them very carefully because there's maybe tax implications in there that they're hiding. And it because all of a sudden you find out the next year when you go to file your tax return that you can no longer write off a certain deduction that you had in the past. You have to be very careful of what Congress does because they're tricky little stinkers, I tell you. Taxation has become more complicated because of all of this trickery and all of this sleight of hand and all of these promises made by politicians. I have been doing taxation work now since 1984, so that's a long time. And I've seen a lot of different things. And I've seen a lot of promises made and a lot of disaster created. And we have to be very, very careful and hold these politicians accountable for what they do. We can no longer believe in promises because promises are very costly to the American people. Well, that's my podcast today. I hope everybody goes out and have a great day. I want to talk with you soon. Let me put my glasses on so I know which button to push. Let everybody go out and have a great day. God bless and keep on trekking. Bye-bye.